Managing your business is interdependent on managing wealth. Today, we're going to talk to the experts about how to set the right path for wealth management. I'm Lisa Ellen Smith, and this is Focus on Business.
Hi, I'm Kelly Nerick, Director of Products and Services with the Small Business Association of Michigan. I'm excited to tell you about a new pooled employer retirement plan that will be available soon for our members. We're aware that our small business members are concerned about rising healthcare costs and decreased productivity due to an aging workforce. We know our members have limited resources, limited time, and they don't want the liability and increased cost of offering a retirement plan. We found a solution. With SBAM's Pooled Employer Retirement Plan, all installation and initial setup fees have been waived, which amounts to a savings of between $1,000 to $2,500. By starting a new retirement plan through SBAM, members may be eligible for up to $5,000 in tax credits each year for 3 years. And when a business establishes a retirement plan with automatic enrollment, they'll receive an additional $500 annual credit each year for 3 years. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more information available on our website, sbam.org. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome to the show. We're here with Matthew Nordman, financial advisor with Morrison Nordman Wealth Management, and Richard Craig Krause, attorney with Krause, Bangs and Associates.
Great to be here.
Hey,
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, we have this is the best topic I can think of for me right now, because it's just all up in the air what's going on in the world of wealth management and taxation. It's confusing for most people. I've said this so many times. I did not get into business so that I could figure out tax law. It just was the last thing on my mind. And really, wealth management, if you have any level of success, you just have to get some professional help. So let's talk about this today. Matthew, why don't you say what you do? Because I think it's really important just to, set the tone and instill the confidence that I already have in you.
Okay, fantastic. So we have a wealth management office, and people say, well, what is wealth management? And whether you call yourself a financial advisor, a planner, a wealth manager, it's what do you do for people, for business owners or families that you work with. And so looking at that wealth management hierarchy, are you only structured for investment management? And there are people who are excellent at that, and that's all they focus on. And as an individual or business owner, you might say, that's all I need. Or maybe it's the financial advisor who does the wealth management or the investing part of it, but then they have maybe one or two other services that they might help you with, or as we say, they might know a guy, right? Well, then if you kind of move up a little bit further and look at wealth management, that's going to start looking at some of the other aspects of tax enhancement and wealth mitigation and wealth transfer and potentially charitable giving. And so how do you have the biggest impact, and working with other experts in the area. And then at the top of that hierarchy is what we call a virtual family office, where you have all those other things, as well as potentially some lifestyle help along the way with all these different areas. And generally you'll see the ultra high net worth families of $500 million and above. Well, they have all these people on staff. Well, most people don't have, that's the problem, right? Most of us don't have $500 million or above. So how do you incorporate that into your plan if maybe you don't have that amount of significant wealth?
Yeah, and the answer is it's possible. Yeah. It just isn't really clearly understood by many of the folks that have the need. And our purpose today is to actually convey the message that those talents, those resources are available to people that want to optimize and maximize what they've worked hard to accomplish. There's no doubt about it.
I'm a little amazed at how many people I know that say, oh, I just do all that myself. I don't want to spend the money on that. I mean, I can do it myself. I'm doing a great job. What do you say to those folks?
I love them. I do. I love people that know how to make a decision. unfortunately, for so many of us, they don't realize that there are complexities that are imposed on their life, even though they don't want to pay attention to it. And one of which is investment strategy and how you actually do what it is that you want to do without taking unnecessary risk, which is Matt's forte, right? And the other thing that's severely imposed on us is the tax structure that relates to income as well as ultimately estate taxation. These are things that if you don't pay attention to, you're going to write the check and pay the freight. It's as simple as that. Does it matter to you? I remember hearing a story of Elvis Presley, and he had an IRS representative come in and do his tax returns for him. And then he wrote the check, and he was happy to do it. Well, I understand that. That's okay. But on the other hand, if you really do want to understand what the value of what you've worked hard to accomplish is worth, and you want to retain that for yourself, and you want to retain that for your family, then you have to recognize that there's benefits that are embedded in the tax law, which have been put there by Congress to make sure that you don't pay too much, because it understands that when it allows that money to remain in your control as a responsible working person with your own business, that you're going to improve the net result to the country far more than if the country exacted and took that from you and passed it on in its own way. So, you don't want to pay attention to it? That's okay too. But if you do have those other goals, you do need to pay attention to it. And though you may not know how to go about doing it, the money that you pay for that help and that advice is really well spent, and it returns in multiple. It does.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in professional services, by the way.
We've all heard the stories, right, of Philip Seymour Hoffman or Prince or Aretha Franklin. One story that it's a few years older, but there was the owner of the Miami Dolphins, Joe Robbie, built his life and built his business and ended up building the brand new football stadium. And it's Joe Robbie Stadium. And then he passes away, and because his estate plan was non-existent for the most part, his family had to come up with $64 million in a short period of time, sell off the naming rights to the stadium and this whole thing. And so his life's work was gone in a very short period of time. And so, again, you would think someone with that amount of wealth would have had, or all the other stories that we were referencing, would have these things in place or have that team in place.
It's almost like admitting you're going to die.
It is.
Really, when you talk about tax planning and wealth management, and you think about things like wills and estates and, all of that stuff, so many of us wait until we have to have it. But unless you've got a pretty special circumstance, you need it before you have to have it.
Generally, and what we'll see happen is you might go see your CPA, and so then the CPA would say, okay, here's your situation. And then they'll say, now go see the estate planning attorney. And then they'll say, go see the financial advisor and go see, and they're all siloed. Instead of all of them working collaboratively saying, okay, what's best for you and your family? And let's make sure we're all working together so that nothing falls through the cracks, and saying, what are those best strategies that work for Lisa and her family?
Yeah, and I should add, if I can, a couple of things. That's what Kingmaker Business is all about. We have all those resources, and it's available to somebody that doesn't have $500 million worth of net cash available, okay?
But it's also, if you have $500 million, it's also available?
It could be.
Okay, just for you people who need
it. I want to say something which is a necessity at this point, and it has to do with the fact these things, these tax issues, these investment strategies, these things, they can be spooky to people.
Yeah.
And they are mysterious, esoteric, unknown, right? And it may just be that, you have to approach these issues now for the first time in your life, and you do need that help. And why is that? Because it's not taught in school. It's not taught at any level. I know people that go through college and end up with a business degree and don't have really any functional knowledge whatsoever about taxation.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And
So-
nobody starts a business so that they can get up on the tax law.
That's a
Think about it.
fact. And so the long run, and the point that I'm really making here to everybody is that, yeah, it is mysterious, but it is something that you just have to pay attention to. And you're the one that's going to benefit from it by doing that. And it is something that you just have to overcome. And it's time. It's time. You
Time
know.
what, 25, 35, 40? When is it time?
It's time anytime you're ready to start.
So I want to talk about two things that in the last 5 years or so got on my radar screen, and I'm not ready to retire yet, but I think it's important to think about this in your 40s. Estate planning. You have children, you have a spouse, you have siblings. What do you, help me think about that. I mean, I'm thinking about it, so I know, but
Well,
not everybody is.
It starts with having a conversation about, again, what is most important to you and what is it that you want to achieve now and maybe when you're not here, and what are your concerns around that, and then meeting with that estate planning attorney and saying, okay, here's what it is that we would like to achieve. How do we do this in the most efficient, whether it's taxes or estate tax or whatever it might be, and having all those people saying, okay, here's what you should be thinking about and structuring and the strategies that you should be using.
So business owners, I've been told you need an estate. Put your business in the estate.
Well, that's probably generally true. But again, it ties into what your objectives are, right? And maybe that isn't consistent with what your objectives are. It's hard to say without going into the details. Those conversations, those initial conversations generate the targets, the objectives, and then you start shaping everything as a result of understanding what those things are. You know, one of the things that, and I talked about this just briefly a moment ago, which is the imposition of the tax structure on all of us, okay, business people and non-business people alike. Two Decembers ago, the new law that went into effect that affects all IRAs and 401ks
That was
is the
20,
Secure
I'm,
Act,
I'm sorry, you said 2 years ago, but let's get that
December
point in
of 2019.
Okay.
Okay. It changes the entire tax structure that relates to IRAs and 401ks completely. Okay? And so those long-term retirement plans, those contributions that were made by people with their own businesses and who wanted to help themselves, right, are in a position today, even though they don't know it, the majority of folks don't know that the Secure Act actually impacts their lives. And so that's a conversation now, by example, that they need to have with somebody that understands how that change in that law can affect them and their survivors.
What changed?
The manner in which and when tax has to be paid. And now there's a general 10-year rule. And that 10-year rule requires that tax be paid, and the total sum of money that's in that IRA, for instance, has to be paid out in 10 years after the date of the death of the owner.
So
And
now
that means there's going to be a pile of tax due.
there's a 10-year rule. It used to be you could take a required minimum distribution based on your age. So if you had inherited an IRA from a parent, you would have your entire life to take that money out. Well, now it has to be out within 10 years from the year after that person passes away.
And there are a couple of minor exceptions, but that is the applicable rule now. And that's a very expensive experience. Think about it. If somebody had an IRA for their entire life and continued to fund it, and they pass, I'm just making up a year, they pass when they're 65 years old, all of the money in that IRA continued to appreciate tax-free. Okay, so it may have started out to have been 125. I'm just using a rough number, 125,000. But by now, with the appreciation in the stock market and such things, right, it could be worth $600,000, $700,000. And then after the date of death, that would also continue to appreciate. If that's not drawn down and drawn down in a tax-conscious way, tax savings way, right? That entire net amount is going to have to be distributed in 10 years following the date of the death of the owner of that IRA, and it'll all be subject to tax at once. Now that's frightening to me.
Yeah, it doesn't allow for the individual to really have
Most people don't
flexibility.
want to.
Yeah.
Most people are like, "Hey, I'll pay my fair share."
Yeah.
But above and beyond that, I don't want all this money that was built up, and sometimes for a number of years, to see it unjustly taken only because someone passed away.
And the context there, again, by way, I used that as an example, and we went into it in some order of detail, I guess. But the whole idea here is that that's another example of a law that is imposed on all of us, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
It's there. And if you have an IRA, you have a 401k, you better pay attention to this. And if they're not Roths, there's an issue there, even if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's going to happen whether you know about it or not, as Richard say.
So what are some other common wealth management things that people really need to focus on that they may not be aware of?
It really starts with understanding what it is that you want, because it can be something simple as, oh, you just need a will, or it can be much more complex of, I'm selling the business and we need to get the business valuation, and how do we structure the deal, because maybe it's a partnership or an S corp or some other type of entity that you're trying to sell that maybe you didn't think about or even know that you should be thinking about. What's the phrase about what's the only ship that doesn't sink? Partnership, right? Or the only one that does sink. I can't remember your phrase there, Richard, but the idea is there are a lot of complexities, and you may not have any of those, but you may have a lot of them, but you have to really have someone help you look at what it is that you are trying to do.
Yeah, but aside from, so I'm just trying to give some practical application here for anybody listening. There's got to be some rules that apply across the board, aside from work with people who know what they're doing.
So there are certain television personalities who use terms like always and never. You should always do this, you should never do that. And I believe Richard could attest to this. You can't say that. In that there is generally never an always or a never, because most situations are very different. Even though you might have the same type of business, the structure might be different in that it's an LLC versus an S corp, or maybe the number of employees might be a little bit different. And maybe your objectives might be different. You might be looking to, how can I build this up to as much value as possible and exit away? And the other person is like, no, this is my life work and I'm going to do this for the next 30 years. And so we try not to get into the everyone should or no one should, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And that's really good to hear, because there's just no pamphlet out there. If you follow and check it off, then you're good to go. I do want to talk about something that I've heard recently about, and that is a step up in basis as it relates to surviving, the person surviving. That you can transfer ownership between spouses. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, I do. There's limits, there's dates and time frames that can be violated. But putting all of that aside, the general concept is to transfer to one spouse property that has a significant amount of appreciation. In other words, non-realized gain. Okay. And then assuming that spouse then passes first, right? Then that property goes back to the surviving spouse, and there is a stepped up basis, meaning that there won't be any tax if the value remains the same. Okay?
So you buy a house for $500,000, it becomes $1 million after 30 years of ownership, transfer it into my husband's name, who's 20 years older than me, thinking that I will be the survivor. And when that transfers to me, the basis becomes $1 million, I don't owe any taxes on that $1 million.
I appreciate your math. I would not use your home, the home, as an example.
I see, okay.
Refer to it as an investment property.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then your basis is increased because you get what's referred to as the stepped up basis. But the point is also that that phrase is really not completely indicative of the law. In other words, that phrase deals with what happens when the property continues to appreciate, goes up in value, right? But the opposite can also occur. You can get a reduced basis if the property depreciates in value. So that is not a harmless decision. It has to be made with some deliberate and conscious decision-making capacity.
I understand. Okay, well, that has been a lot of good information. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A standard definition of what constitutes floodwater damaging your property is that water is coming into your building from the outside. So it's not that you've had a plumbing leak or a sewer or drain backup causing water damage. Rather, the waters come in through an open window, a broken window, a cracked foundation, etc. And standard insurance policies don't cover damages from that loss. In 1968, the U.S. Congress established the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. By this time, private insurance companies had backed away from offering flood insurance after a series of disasters hit the country. Decades and many iterations later, it remains true that FEMA's flood program provides insurance, and you can secure that through your homeowner's insurance agent. Private insurance companies have re-emerged in the flood market as well. They offer policies that can sometimes provide more coverage. A higher percentage of your building, contents, and other structures can be protected. But where your property is located in the flood insurance rate map will be a determiner of the price you pay and what options are available to you within that private market. Depending on the location of your building, residential and commercial property loans may require flood insurance as a condition to extend financing. So if you're considering the purchase of a new property, plan ahead to check where that is located on the flood map. And seek flood insurance quotes early so you can plan the expense into your budget. It's not uncommon for flood insurance to be several times the annual expense of the property coverage yourself. You don't have to live in a coastal area to be at risk of flooding. My hometown of Lansing, Michigan has been the site of numerous floods just in my lifetime. I encourage you to research flood insurance options for yourself and weigh the pros and cons. The peace of mind is worth it.
Focus on Insurance, brought to you by Cedar River Insurance.
Build a better marketing strategy with Inverve Marketing. The way we buy has changed. It's time to dream bigger. With digital marketing, you can build your business faster, measure and evaluate results. Let us help you find your marketing superpowers with Inbound Marketing, driven by strategy with inspired creativity. Why not put some verve in your brand? Market and grow better with Inverve Marketing.
If you intend to buy or build a commercial or residential rental building, or if you just did, listen up. I'm going to tell you about tax law that can help you generate fast and huge tax-free cash flow, a method that allows you to accelerate depreciation of certain systems that service your property. So rather than taking depreciation over a period as long as 39 years, you may be able to depreciate the cost of eligible systems over 5 or 7 years. Imagine that. You can recover your costs faster and put that money to work in new, profit-generating projects. The method is called cost segregation. It's accepted and proven and affordable. Understand, Congress wants you to benefit in this way because it knows that keeping money in your productive hands is good for everybody in our country. And you can benefit from an immediate increase in your net cash flow, reduce your current tax liability, and defer taxes. And you may even be able to reclaim missed deductions from prior years, possibly without even amending tax returns. A wide range of building systems are eligible. Electrical and communication installations, plumbing, mechanical components, building finishes, and some improvements to land. Remember, $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. The bottom line, By accelerating depreciation into dramatically shorter periods, commercial property owners can lower their tax liability and realize a significant increase in net cash flow. You have a 5P obligation to yourself, and Kingmaker Business helps you achieve it. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And what have you done today to accomplish that? I'm attorney Richard Craig Krause, the taxpayer's voice, speaking for Kingmaker Business. Talk to us. This is about you.
Focus on Tax, brought to you by Kraus, Bangs, and Associates PC.
This is Denise Policella with Focus on Legal, and today we're talking about having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. And of course, DEI is the goal. You're saying to yourself, I have a DEI workplace, I'm a fair person, but do you truly? And if you don't, how do we get you there and still keep you risk averse? Well, the key is true objectivity, which you may not have from inside your own company. This is what I mean. Not having any policy and just assuming that you have a diverse workplace is just delaying the inevitable. But going way, way overboard and starting to just randomly hire people because they make your company physically look more diverse is going to have the opposite of the intended effect and will backfire on you. What I'm talking about is having a diverse and inclusive culture while maintaining objective practices and policies. Here's an example. When you go to hire, you want an ad that clearly incentivizes pulling people from a wide variety of backgrounds and cultures. And then when you go to actually make your hiring decision, you base your decision on objective criteria like education and qualifications and experience. Also make sure that you understand that diversity does not mean inclusion. Just because you may have a diverse workplace doesn't mean it feels inclusive. Do you still have antiquated policies that only recognize Christian holidays, for example? Now, I'm not suggesting that you close your business for all religious holidays on the calendar or you'll never be open, but maybe only on national holidays and then give floating holidays for individual religious observance, something like that. This kind of scrutiny is hard to do to yourself, and it's hard to get a lot of perspective on your own company from the inside. So hire somebody from the outside who's an HR expert in this area, and do it soon. This is something you want to take initiative on. You do not want this growing as a grassroots movement in your own company. Being reactionary is never good risk management practice. So start today and don't handle this one on your own.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Pochella and Associates, PLLC.
The executive producers of Focus on Business are looking for your stories. Stories from owners of established businesses that have come through amazing adversity, bucked the odds, found the next big thing. If you have a story, we want to hear from you. Go to our website and maybe we'll invite you onto the show.